Hi, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Today we're gonna basically just have a brief outline on exchanges. What do we do with an exchange, how it works, what the process is, what the benefit to the customer is. So, kind of real quick, what's an exchange? It's kind of basically the easiest way to put it on is to swap. We're swapping our decent unit for their issue with it, whatever it is, with the specific unit that they're bringing in. Purpose of the exchange, anybody?
Saves some money.
That's one of the main reasons. Customer saves money and lead time. So it's a nice opportunity for us to be able to build with that customer and get them out of whatever issue. And as we all know, time is money in the industry, so if we can get it to them faster, and we already have it ready, it kind of helps the customer. What are the issues or the procedures for the repairs is basically, you will hear this a lot when you're talking to a customer, which is your core. What is your core? The core is the actual unit that's coming back to us, the one that needs to be repaired. So you will hear that with a lot of the customers that they're sending back the core, and you'll say, well, what is a core? That's basically what it is. Unit in hand at the facility, you guys already go through this, so you will know the unit is in the facility. We already know what's wrong with it. So we'll have it up on what is the cost that's going to be involved, that all, basically what you guys
Normally
issue
for
with.
repairs, where we're gonna get involved is, the unit will already be here. Occasionally, the customer might tell you in advance that they need a rush. And on the repair side, one of two things is happening. Either the account manager has been informed that there's gonna be long lead time on the unit, and we proactively decide to get an exchange offer put together for our customer. And we'll reach out to sales and ask if there's a unit that's available to do an exchange. Or sometimes the customer will get a quote, and the quote will say a long lead time, and the customer will ask us, can we do an exchange for this? And then at the same point, we're gonna reach out to sales and say, hey, do you guys have one of these available that we can do an exchange for? If you say yes to either one of these options, then we're gonna ask you to put together an exchange offer for the customer. And normally, that exchange offer would be sent by sales with us copied into whoever we're dealing with. And the exchange offer is going to list, if we already have a repair quote, it's gonna list the amount, because we already know what it is, and we know whether it's lower than the outright. If we don't have a repair amount, then it's gonna have what the outright sales number would be, which means, let's say it's $9,000 for an outright. If the repair is less than that, then they can do the exchange and they just pay the repair cost. If it's gonna be more than that, then it turns into an outright, it's no longer an exchange. Once the customer accepts the exchange for repairs, we're pretty much done with it. You can keep us copied in so we can see what's happening with our customer, but we're no longer gonna be involved. At that point, it will be a totally sales-driven process. And that's when Pete would take over for
Yeah,
what you
and
guys.
basically, unit in hand, at the facility, we already know that it's here, we know what possibly is wrong with it, so we know we can offer that exchange. The reason for the exchange, we were just talking about it, what's driven is basically lead time and cost. And it's just easier for them to be able to say, okay, I'm gonna pay $2,000 right now and have a unit in hand, ready to go, and then they pay for the overhaul once the unit is sent through the shop and gone through the process. So for them, economically, it's worth it, and it's worth on the time, which is the biggest issue that they would have. What is required, we're just talking about that process. These are really the main components that you in repairs wanna know. When the unit is coming in, you wanna know that because of the fact that it's here and it's not our unit, they will not send you trace. So you wanna request the trace paperwork, if you can, upfront, plus a non-incident statement with the trace. And that'll just, this will make things a lot easier.
Oh,
Yeah, no, but if you can do this in repairs, just to get
Oh,
the
I thought
ball
we agreed-
going,
I thought
it
we
would be,
agreed
yeah.
that
We would
sales
do
would
that
be-
in our sales side, but on the repair side, since it's your customer, you already know them, if you can let them know, hey, we are gonna do an exchange, can you possibly send us the paperwork, because you know them better than we do.
Okay,
Um,
so, just so we're clear, I'm fine if we're gonna do it, but you and I talked one-on-one, I got the impression sales was gonna do it. If we're gonna do it, that's fine, we can do it.
Yeah, this is
But-
on units that are specifically driven with your customer.
Units that are in-house.
Correct.
Now, I understand, so, that's fine.
And the reason why I say that is because I think it would be easier for you, since you know your customer, to say, hey, can you possibly do this for me, instead of me coming in.
And we can always copy in the sales rep and.
Exactly.
I'm perfectly
Exactly.
fine with it, it's
Okay.
just different than what we discussed
Yeah,
the
but-
other day, so that's
Yeah.
fine.
So
But
that is one of the main one of the.
I don't want it to be an either or thing, so if it's in-house and we're initiating it on the repair side, then it's gonna be the repair account manager's responsibility to get the trays.
If we could, I would prefer that, yes.
Then that's what we're
Yeah,
gonna do.
perfect.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine.
whereas
Yeah.
if the unit's not in-house and somebody's just asking for price, and
We'll
since
get-
also
we'll-
do you offer exchange?
We'll get that in a couple of minutes. You'll obviously forward the information to us. I believe the process is Rob will take a look at it, paperwork wise.
The trace paperwork.
The trace
yes.
paperwork wise, and then we'll have it, so this way we can scan it and put it into the system, and that's our responsibility once we have the paperwork. If the unit is not in-house, you have your customer saying, I have this, I need it, you have one, we're gonna send you guys our unit. Really important to get a management approved sign off before we do that. And what basically happens a lot of times is the airline is in a rush. They don't realize that they might have a BER unit at hand, and we have no way of knowing that. So to avoid having that problem, let's have senior management get involved. I would suggest that we have this run by Sandra to say, hey, we have a unit that we're gonna do an exchange on. We don't have the core yet, and let senior management make that decision. Are we kind of clear on that one? Are you good with that?
If you're doing an exchange on something we're not initiating, even if it's a customer that asks us, and we don't have the unit here, what we're gonna do in repairs is forward that email to you and let you work with the customer on it. The only time we're going to be involved really with an exchange is if it's a repair unit that we're trying to get an exchange started for, so if we
This is-
initiate it.
This is coming from your customer. They're telling you, hey, Brian,
Right.
I don't have this unit in your facility yet, but do you have an exchange unit?
Right.
I just wanna make sure that we understand.
That's going to sales.
Okay.
So I'm gonna forward that request to sales and tell the customer, hey, I'm gonna have sales check on an exchange option for you. I'm copying in Pete, he'll be able to help you out.
Okay, so we're clear on that if the unit is not here, we need to get management approval on it.
Okay, so you guys are not
Well,
us.
yeah, we'll wind up taking care of that. So that is kind of basically a nutshell in what you guys are limited with what you're doing in repairs. After that, like Brian said, it's our responsibility, we will take it over. Brian will forward everything to me, and from that day on, I'll be handling it until we can get sales trained and involved, because it gets a little complicated. And we'll go over on what we normally have to do, so you kind of get a broad idea of what entails on the sales side. So getting into that,
Just real quick, I wanna throw in, if you're having difficulty with getting information from a customer that we work with, we're gonna pass it off, but if you need to try to get help from us, it's certainly okay to contact the account manager and say, hey, I'm trying to get an update, they're not answering, can you help me with this? And we could try to reach out to the customer directly to get an answer. I'm not saying we're so out of it, you can't ask us to help out if you're having trouble finishing it up.
what we normally do, and now this is a strictly, it could have been a customer that calls us, or maybe you're referring somebody to us that, hey, they want to do an exchange on something that we have in-house that is part of GAI stock. our stock. First thing that we're gonna wind up doing, going through the process, we're gonna send them an exchange agreement. And that is just a exchange agreement contract, basically covering all the information that we have on that unit, telling them, we're gonna send you serial number 1, 2, 3, we're getting back 2, 3, 4. And without a signed, executed agreement, exchange agreement, we will not release an order to anyone. If they don't sign it, it can't go out. So we'll be pretty clear on the sales side about that. What we normally do, and we haven't done, but we will do, and getting back to the process on this rate-wise, it has been my understanding, and it will continue to be the same, that we, as long as it's our customer, that we have the unit in-house, we do not charge an exchange fee
For airlines.
for the airlines.
I don't care what you charge brokers
Yeah,
for.
yeah, no, this is your customers.
No, but even our broker customers, I'm telling you, if it's a broker customer, even if it's in-house and it's our customer, you can charge them fees.
Okay, so we understand that the airlines, that's the process, it's always been that way. The reason why they've done that is because that way we know that they will have continuing, usage and coming back to us because we're not charging, so it's a marketing tool. For us, totally different, we will charge for the exchange. The standard is 10% of the outright value of the unit. And that is a standard through the industry. So whatever your outright unit will be, it's 10%. That's our exchange fee. And that's non-negotiable, and we do not give credit of the exchange because that's a play with a lot of brokers. Will come back and say, oh, I paid you $1,000, do I get that $1,000 back when the repair is done? No, this is just for that transaction, just for the exchange. One of the things that normally happens with cores is make sure that the unit is in-house. We're not going to release a unit again without prior notification to senior management to say, hey, they claim that they're gonna send us a unit. Well, can we do this exchange? That's an evaluation of senior management and accounting to see if we wanna take that risk or not. So it is not up to us. We can just make that suggestion if the airline or the customer or the broker. But for me, normally, if it's not in-house and we don't see it, it's not going out the door.
Now,
So,
Pete, just to mention, and what they did in the past, and I mean, you can handle how you want, is they would give, when they would do the exchange offer, they would say, if you don't have the core in by this time frame, then we're gonna charge you outright.
that we'll discuss in a minute because that's part of the exchange agreement.
Because people aren't gonna wanna wait to get their exchange unit shipped out until they get the core in.
Well, what we normally do in the industry is typical. You have the unit come in, right? Or they're claiming that it's going to be coming in. It's somebody that we normally don't deal with. And this is an accounting issue, but as within sales, we need to get involved in this. Let's say the unit costs 10K. That's our outright. We're gonna charge 10% of that. But they don't have credit with us. So normally what happens, and they complain about it, but this is again, a standard process, is we tell them you have to pay your 10% payment and you have to pay the $10,000 core upfront. And what we do is we have that check or that payment, however it is, to accounting. Accounting holds on to it at the end of the process, and the unit has been already gone through its overhaul. Let's say it costs $5,000 for the repair. We give them back $5K back to the customer. Now, it's not a policy that everybody likes, but it's the only way possible for you to get your money back. So, all right, do we have an idea clear on that one? So, again, customer we don't deal with, they don't have credit with us, we'll give you an exchange, but you have to pay for it. You pay for your exchange and you pay for the outright. And once the process is done, they get a refund for whatever the difference is. It's not a popular thing, but it's the only way that you have control on getting paid. So getting back to that part that you just mentioned, that's
Well,
what-
I mean, that's
yeah.
different, you're talking about someone you don't have terms with, I'm
Correct.
referring to people we have terms with.
That again is gonna be an accounting call, and we would take care of that, of Do we wanna take that risk or not? I don't think in the past we've ever really even considered it. Again, if it's not in-house, we already know we're gonna ask for senior management to get involved and let us know if we can do it or not. These processes are fairly easy and fairly fast, so the customer comes back to you immediately, and if they're in that really desperate mode, they go through this process pretty fast. So it's not gonna be a real time-consuming issue. For us also, of course, trace. Big issue with making sure that we have trace. So once we have the trace, if your customer wasn't able to give you the trace when this process was, we will follow up on it. We'll give it to Rob, for Rob to take a look at it, tell us, yeah, the paperwork looks good. We know that then we're off and running with it. This is one thing that I know we were never doing, and it is a major issue when it comes to a unit. And this is specifically, I want you guys to understand it, so you will have an idea of some of the issues that sometimes happens with these units.
Everything needs to match.
If we send them a unit, we want equivalent or better on the return of that unit. So an example, if we send out a 123-123, we want the -123 coming back to us or better. Normally what happens is an airline or a broker will send you back a unit that is less than the unit that's going out. That's typical, standard, and then they don't want to pay for the upgrade. And they'll complain about it and say, well, so you want to always make sure that you are getting back equivalent of the one that you're sending out.
The dash number is not the hard part. It's the other things that
Yeah.
you really have to watch.
Now,
out for.
One of the other issues that we've had is service bulletins and ADs. Again, you gotta remember, a unit has been on a plane maybe 5 years. So have the service bulletins been updated? Have the ADs, and the ADs are not that critical for us because they're just directives that will come down, but it's always a great question to ask. Is there any ADs that have to be done with it? And then you can pass that information to your repair guys and say, hey, I know this AD might be coming down, it's something for us to look at. So it's some additional information that we can pass on so we can know that we might have an issue with some ADs coming down and we can get a jump on it. It's always a good tool. Again, dash number, which we were just talking about before, make sure that we're getting the same dash number or better, and you gotta keep on really going over that because it'll cost us money by doing that. We can get a -101 and the jump between a 101 and a 123 can be, as you're nodding your head, can be very
Who's gonna follow
substantial.
the core?
Yeah.
It's gonna be sales, right?
Correct.
Okay.
We will verify all the paperwork, verify all the process with money when it comes to accounting. We will find out, can we do this, can we not do that? That is strictly up to us in sales. And we will do all the following up on the unit in the process of where it's at in the shop and have it on an Excel spreadsheet for at the end, everybody will be able to see what we have available for exchange. And we'll have that hopefully within the next week or so of a list that we will continue to add on of those units that we are looking to put on that exchange list. So if you know of anybody, or you're talking to one of your customers, or you're talking to your customers, or you're talking to your guys, and they say, hey, we're having problems with this unit, can you get us an exchange? Automatically let us know so we can go start the process of shopping it and see if we can bring it in. And if it's economically worth it, we'll put it on the exchange, and we will use those strictly for exchange and exchange only. We are not gonna sell them. They're just going to be just for those customers. So if we can tailor a pack of units, that's the best thing that we can do right now. And just to give you kind of a quick idea on an exchange, let's say we have $5,000 on the unit and we exchange it for $1,000, that's $1,000 that comes off the cost. So if we exchange this 5 times, at the end we have 0 cost on the unit. So from there on, everything that we collect from it is gravy. So if we have 50 of these units, you can do the math and come out, you know what? It comes out to a pretty good deal if we can get that started. So that's one of the main reasons why we're looking to do this, because of the fact that if we have a unit in-house that has a lot of cost, we can put it on the exchange program and get that cost out of it, which we've kind of been dealing with in sales. We've had some units that have a high cost. It's the only way we're really gonna get our cost out of it. So for accounting, it's a win-win situation because and for the shop, it's continuing work, it's continuing to lower that price, and at the end, we wind up with a unit that has no cost in it, and it's gravy from there on. Anybody have any questions or anything like that so far?
I wanted to add, whenever you're like looking at the equivalent unit, military is also something.
Correct.
Because military can't be swapped and all that.
Right.
So,
Well, in our case, we don't deal too much with military,
Right.
so we don't really would have that problem, but for those of you that are new, you don't take a military part and swap it with a commercial aircraft part, because that is big. We already know we don't do that. In the non-incident statement and in the choice paperwork, it will specify on probably one of the certs that this is a commercial aircraft, blah, 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 blah. So you shouldn't have that paper. And Rob would catch that as soon as he's looking at it. So we shouldn't have that problem, but yeah, that can wind up being some, we've had some issues with dealing with Vertex, that a serial number for a military aircraft was done as an exchange, and that becomes a whole different animal that wasn't even thought of. So now we're dealing with an aircraft that is a military aircraft, and what do we do with it? Really not much. So again, those are things that we will continue to add and continue to work with and continue to make an understanding and training each other of what can we do and what we can't do. But for us, normally in sales, we don't do too much of that. And if it does come into that point, we would bring it up and have a meeting about it and say, can we do this or can we not do that? We didn't have that meeting before, so it's kind of something that started to become an issue when we found out about it, and now we've got to deal with it. So again, understand for us, you guys are gonna it's gonna be pretty clear and cut. You're gonna get it done, you're gonna send it over to us. We're gonna really do the majority of the investigating and the part or the process of knowing everything. But I want you guys to get an idea of what it entails, so you have so you have a better understanding what the exchange really does. And it's kind of very simple, but as Bev and I were talking, sometimes it has little issues and it can go left and it can go right, and there can be a major problem about a specific unit that we wouldn't know about. So we have to do our due diligence, we have to do our work, we have to know what our marketing is on these, and that's gonna be on us to be able to do that, so we can market these items at a decent price and know that it's gonna be an item that's gonna be good for the shop. You'll be able to make some decent money on it. And again, it's the repeat. Knowing that we can count on one unit to maybe go through the shop 3 times in 1 year, instead of just once sold, done, out the door. So that is kind of basically where we're kind of looking at on having this all in process. Brian and I were talking about, once we had this meeting, the next thing that we're going to wind up doing, because of the fact that none of us have really done an exchange here in Quantum, and we had Jerry, who's I guess was the guru on exchanges. So the first unit that comes in, we're probably going to put it up on the screen. All of us go through that process just so we understand it, and we, have Billy, our IT guy, in to be able to explain, this is how you do it. Let's make sure that we do it properly and have everybody trained on it. So that's the only reason why I didn't use the screen, because of the fact that I'm not at that point either.
The only
Yes.
adjustment to what I would say is that I'm not going to have them run the exchanges through me. If they have an exchange they need to do, they're gonna contact you
Okay.
directly. I don't really, adding me into it is unnecessary. They already know what they're gonna be doing, so they'll reach out to you directly to see if you have an exchange available. And that's the main thing we're gonna be reaching out for anyways.
Okay.
We can look on inventory, and we should be looking on inventory before we reach out to them. But even if we see one that we think is okay, we're gonna double check through Pete, make sure it's okay.
Right.
And then we're gonna let sales propose the exchange to the customer and just copy us in.
Okay.
But if we're gonna do trace on our side, once we know that we have an exchange unit, before we move forward with the exchange, we're going to get the trace from the customer. We're gonna get it verified, and then we can do the exchange. We're not gonna do the exchange, and yeah, you'll get us a trace when you get a chance. That's gonna be an upfront thing.
Correct. And the reason why we want to put this in place that way, and if you can generate it at the beginning, is because we did have a unit where it kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit, where we wanted to satisfy the customer and we did the right thing in that. And then when we went back to the customer and said, can you supply us trace? It was like, we don't have time, we can't do it.
We asked them 6
Yeah.
months after the
Yeah.
fact, so they didn't still have the paperwork, go figure.
So again, knowing how an airline is, they're not gonna wanna go through that process to get it. So if we can cut it off early and request the paperwork, if you guys can help us with that, that's a big step, because then we already know it's been traced. If there's an issue, there's a hole with trace, then we know we can't do this exchange.
And this didn't happen with anyone in here, I'm gonna state that up front, but it's important that we use the right vocabulary when we're dealing with customers. So it's an exchange as long as we're doing the exchange. We're gonna get the core and keep the core, and they're getting one from us. The second we determine we're not keeping a core because it's too cost ineffective, and they're just buying a unit from us, it's an outright sale. We need to not call it a freaking exchange after it turns into an outright sale. That drove me crazy with Vertex. We did that for like 6 months. I could not stand that we kept doing it, and it caused the customer to get really confused. So it's just important when it changes that we change what we're calling it. That's-
If
Yes.
we have initially charged them the 10% of the unit the fair market of the unit that we're sending out, if it indeed does turn into an outright sale, do we just charge them the difference then?
No, we charge them the outright price. If it's
On
a,
top of,
yes, the exchange is basically for us in sales. It is basically a transaction for actually taking that unit. So customers will ask you, hey, I paid you $1,000 for the exchange. Now it's gonna go outright, I want a credit of $1,000.
okay, so no matter if they get a repair bill at the end or an invoice for the outright unit, we still keep that initial 10%.
Correct. Yes, correct. We keep the exchange fee.
Okay.
That is our cost for what we're doing for that customer.
And so when the customer is asking us to quote them outright and exchange, then we would have one line item for the market value of the unit that we have. We'd have a
And
second line item
second
for
line
the
item for the
10%.
exchange.
And is that the EX condition that I see in the system? Okay,
So,
That's the exchange fee.
okay, and so then you would just make a note under that probably just to clarify this is the exchange fee.
yeah. And again, that's something that we'll go over once we have this all in place right now, and then we'll do it on the screen, and they know exactly what we're gonna do, how it's gonna get done. But I didn't wanna get to that point because I still have to have Billy involved, because of the process I've had gone. So that's why we're not gonna use the screen right now.
When you see those quotes in there where Jerry has, like an AR and an EX and then an OH or a serviceable, that's the core unit, and it'll usually have a 0 and then that exchange fee and then the outright as well. And that's why he has those in there. And if you go in and look up that quote, you can see and you'll see his notes, and you can print one as an example.
Oh, okay.
Because it
okay.
doesn't make sense when you're looking in Quantum there, but if you go in the quote number,
And look
pull
at
it up
the-
and print it, it will have this stuff in there and it'll
So
make
it's a
sense.
$0 for the unit plus another line item for the exchange fee.
Right, and then
Okay.
plus the
Plus the
outright if
outright.
there's that.
Plus the outright,
Yes.
correct. Now, also, in the exchange agreement, it is kind of basically pretty ironclad, but you do have some leeway in the time that they may need it. Because it could be a unit that is overseas. So they're gonna say to you, well, I need X amount of time to get that core back to you. Again, if we don't have the core, we're gonna go back to management and say, present it and say, here's the issue. If the core unit, in this kind of a case, if we have a airline that we've made that adjustment for. The exchange agreement will give them X amount of days. If they don't return the unit within X amount of days, they get charged a second exchange fee. Doesn't happen that often, but it's something that we might have to come across. Within 45 days, if the unit is not here, we automatically charge them outright for that unit. So that is 2 exchanges plus the outright. Again, we don't anticipate that happening, but it may be a scenario that happens, and we don't wanna just leave money on the table. Yes.
Are we going toward the standard 30 days for them to come back for that? And then 45 for that?
What I like to do is, if it's a broker, and it's somebody that we don't do a lot of business with, and we don't feel comfortable, if the unit is not in-house, we won't release the unit.
Okay.
If it's someone that we do a lot of business with, and we know they're gonna be a little late on it, I don't see a problem with releasing it and waiting for that core unit to come in. But specifically for those customers that we don't do a lot of business with, or we've never done any business with, if the core unit is not here, we're not gonna release it because we don't know where we're gonna get back. And then we're gonna go wind up chasing, and I don't like chasing
So
back.
are we gonna lean toward, for the customers that we do know, are we gonna lean toward like the same as our RMAs for a 2-week period? Or are we gonna try to lean toward a 30-day period?
For the return of the core,
Yes, for the customers that
Again-
we are familiar with.
right, if we feel comfortable with them, we can give them 30 days.
Okay.
Normally, standard is 15 to 20 days for the quarter unit to get back, but if it's a good customer of ours that we know we deal a lot with, I don't see us having a problem
So
giving
the
them
20
30
and
days.
20 to 30 will be the grace period.
That's the grace
The 30
period.
to 45 is the
Correct,
outright.
is the outright. So within 45 days, they haven't returned the unit back to you. Now we're losing money, so we have to charge outright for it, and we're going to charge outright for it, and we might have a complaint here and there, but they're gonna go back to that executed signed agreement.
Yeah, I think I've only had to do that twice in 12
I
years.
I think I've done it 3 times in 20-somewhat years. That it's not gonna be a cat, but it's gonna happen. So if it's a good customer and they just had anything can happen. It got lost, it got this, it got that.
Held up in customs.
Held up in customs, yeah, it can happen. So it really isn't our fault. They have to take care of it, but if it's a good customer, we'll kind of work around that. And I'm sure we will find the solution for it. Also, there is a standard understanding that they'll pay freight for the shipping going out and the shipping coming back. So that's already covered in ours. We don't have to worry about it. They understand that when they sign it, they're paying for the shipment coming back to us, and they're paying for the shipment going to them. If there is a AOG in this kind of a situation, same principle goes. They are going to wind up having to pay a little extra for getting it out on a weekend or getting it out on on a later time, and that's something that's negotiable, but it should be always on the table because then we can negotiate with it. So, anybody else? Any other questions or? Brooks, you got that look? No? You good?
Good.
Okay, so basically, that's it. It's kind of pretty cut and forward. I don't think there's really not much of it. I mean, we always have something that's gonna come in. And, we were kind of laughing about this the other day and saying, there's always one deal that goes bad from the beginning and you can't do anything about it. It's gonna happen. But we are putting in place these issues so we know if we had that problem, we have backup to say, here you go. In the past, we really didn't do that much, and I don't think, and you can correct me on this, I don't think an exchange agreement was ever sent to a customer. I've never found one. I know we had one
Not an
existing.
agreement, they would
Yeah.
send that little
That-
exchange thing
right.
that Jerry would create.
And so we really never had an ironclad exchange agreement, so we will have that within the next couple of days. I haven't kind of finished it, but I had Jeff taking a look at it, and he was gonna change a couple of things, so once I have that, I'll give everybody a copy so you're familiar with it, you can understand it, and we'll go over it if we need on exactly what this means, and, it's pretty clear.
If you guys get a, exchange list put together with a decent amount of inventory, and we can attach it to status reports and send it to, customers, and so they can see what we currently have.
I like that idea, and I do not have a problem with
I
it.
think we did it in the past sometimes.
I know that there was a list that we would take out to customers and try to push the list But I don't know if it was an exchange list.
But an exchange list would be a good idea, so the customers will know what we have in stock that we can do an exchange on, but it'll have to be fairly accurate and.
Well, we're starting that building as of now, so it would be accurate. And again, the way we are going to look at, or the way we are gonna work it, it's going to be a separate sheet of inventory that is only for exchanges. And that's all we're gonna do with it. If a customer is desperate and really wanting it, they're gonna pay for it, because that's gonna be our bread and butter, so we don't wanna tap into that if we don't have to. So the whole purpose is just continuing to, go through that process. Something else that tends to happen sometimes, and I'd love to do it, but I know it's a little bit more complicated, is taking a unit and leasing it out. Yeah, but you make some good money by doing that. And basically what you're doing is, a airline has a unit that might be a high value dollar item that they don't wanna go buy, they don't wanna go pay an exchange, but it's economically worth for them to lease it from you for 3 months until they get their unit in. Right, so we might be able to consider doing that, but again, there are going to be certain restrictions to it, and it's going to be.
And then you have to have cycles limited.
Correct.
And cycles
You know,
noted.
Yeah, power by the hour is something totally different, we'll never get into that, because that is
My only
just.
concern with that, Pete, is the leasing, once I gave it some thought after we discussed it, is something that you have to be either all in on or don't do it at all, because trying to dip your toe into the pool on leasing is just gonna create a lot more work than.
Again, not power by the hour, but it's just more of a straight lease, and again.
I know what you're
yeah.
saying about leasing, I'm saying that if you do one here, one there, I feel like you're gonna spend a lot more time than you're getting back revenue for it. So unless you're willing to commit to it and do it, a lot of it, so that.
Well, that's what this whole program is basically going to, hopefully we get to the point 6 months from now that we have 50, 60 units out there that are specifically for that, and again.
Well, then that'll be fine, if you have enough units, it'd be fine.
Exactly.
In the past, the exchange list has been, I don't know, like 10, 15 units on that,
Right.
and that's what I'm saying, we'll send it out when we get together a decent inventory list. I'm not gonna send out an exchange list that has 5 parts on it to customers.
And we're kind of playing around with the idea, if we take those specific units and code them on ILS as exchange only, so the customer will know automatically, you got one, you have one ready as an exchange. So that's something that we're kind of talking to Billy about, can we have that? And I've seen it before with other companies, so I think we
It's
could.
when you're uploading the list, when you add stuff to it, you can go to the specific item and there's an exchange only tab on it.
Okay,
It's just an option when you're uploading.
so we're kind of
Don't
thinking that
even
we can
need
do
Billy.
that.
You got Betty.
So that's kind of, like I said, that is kind of where we are. That's kind of give you a little brief outline of it.
Brooks called
So,
me that yesterday.
But I get everybody's name wrong. I called him Greg for the first month. Sorry.
I got you. But anyway, so thank you for your time. Like I said, if we have any other questions, we'll talk about it. I'll go on. Yes.
So if you guys have a unit, like I know when I was over in purchasing, Cargo Lux had those issues with the 13 Baker generators.
Yeah.
And we have the one here. What?
Yeah, we're having one right now, actually.
Okay, well, if there's a unit like that comes up where, I mean, Kyle used to be on me, hey, they need all 8 of their generators yesterday. So if there's a unit like that comes up and you guys are having issues with it and just say, hey, they're always hot for these and they always need them, maybe that's something we can add to the
I
exchange.
mean, it
pool.
is something we're going to, it's something I've already talked with Stacy, I don't know if I talked with you about it yet, Brooks, but we were gonna reach out to our customers about finding out what units they're gonna send to us, so we could try to either have piece parts on hand or an exchange available.
Right.
But we haven't been too aggressive on it, because to be honest, the sales team is still getting, you
Yeah.
guys are all still kinda new and getting things set up, and there wasn't really a good exchange list set up yet, so now that we're working on it,
Right.
that will be something that we'll do in the future, try to.
I mean, cause I know there's certain customers who just have issues with, certain
Cargo
units all
Lux,
the time.
Cargo Lux does a lot of, me and Jerry did a ton of exchanges for Cargo Lux back in the day, so.
Okay.
They love supplying parts, they love doing exchanges, they're fun.
They like to make it
Stacy's
complicated,
now
but they
on.
like to save money.
Yes.
So, when, a unit gets shipped out as an exchange, it'll come out of inventory.
Okay. that'll be something that we'll go over later on the actual in and outs of the system, because I can't intelligently tell you this is how the system works, because I really don't know yet.
Okay.
Again, none of us have done an exchange, only one individual in a sales department was no longer there. We have a pretty good idea, Bev and I have been looking at it, we have a pretty good idea, but until we actually put one in play and see how it comes out, we're not going to, because that's what Billy wants to do, he wants to be there so we can see it, explain this is the reason for it, because as we all know, Quantum has its ways of doing things, so we want to make sure that we're there. Once we know we're ready to the first exchange, we'll all come in here, we'll all do it together, we'll have a pretty good idea how it's done, and then we'll take it from there. I believe he's working on a program, we'll actually take snaps of the screen, so that will be part of training from there on. You can go into, I'm not sure exactly where it's going to wind up going, if it's going to be on the hard drive or it's going to be on the cloud. So if you want to go back and say, I need to refresh myself on how this worked, it's going to be available on video, which is why we're starting to do this. So they'll be available for everybody to go back, look at them and train. It's a visual aid. I think it's a pretty cool idea. So something that we can wind up working on.
So when our unit comes back in from the exchange, they have to re-overhaul it again?
That's correct. And the customer pays for the overall.
So just to give you an example of what happens at this point, so they agreed to the exchange, and there's a work order open already because the customer unit's here. That's an external work order. At that point, whoever in sales is handling it's gonna take that external work order back to Jamie and tell her it's an exchange. That's gonna close. The external work order is closing because they don't have a unit here anymore. Their unit was shipped out with the exchange. Now that unit that was here is our unit, and they're gonna create an internal work order, like a GAI work order, to get it fixed so it can go into our stock. So that's where the switch happens. At that point, once the external work order is closed and then it's changed to internal work order, it's really just like a GAI work order at that point. So it's not, this isn't as bad as it sounds. It sounds more complicated than it is. It's really not. Once it gets switched over, you just handle it like a regular GAI unit at that point. The shop has to get it built, it goes in stock. It's just gonna be the same way with every other unit that comes in, we
Okay.
buy ourselves.
I got you, my light bulb just came on. All right.
Okay?
And we will have an Excel spreadsheet with the exchanges on it, so if there's any questions about where something is, or if this unit's an exchange, or what happened to it, then it'll be on
Yeah,
there.
and you guys will in sales, and I'm assuming that Brian's gonna also wanna have this available
The
for you
first,
guys.
the first.
We'll have it
repair-
coded, so we will know on that spreadsheet, this unit's out right now. So we don't have that unit to give that exchange, and as soon as it comes back in and it's ready with the tag ready to go, it's back on a certain color. So we're kind of working with that, so everybody will have that sheet available on the iDrive. And we'll know what's in, what's out, and again, customer service, all you gotta do is just basically look at it and say, here you go. We will start and continue to monitor and keep it updated as best as we can.
So, oh, it just left me.
Okay, with that, thank you very much, everybody. Let's get back to work, and